Welcome to Ploughman's Backyard. Today we're on another garden tour. It is mid-August. I'm just going to show you just a little bit of improvement we've had in the garden so far. If you had caught our July garden tour, you will have known that we have had a very poor start to the garden and it really hasn't improved a whole lot. Most of the time we have a bountiful harvest in August. I'm just starting to get some ripened tomatoes. You may have also caught our other video on when our tomatoes weren't flowering. Well, they have started flowering and we are getting some tomatoes. They're just way behind. We've had a lot of rain this year, which has really affected the garden, and we haven't had a lot of heat, and that definitely affects the garden as well. There is definitely some improvement. I'm just going to show you what we have growing. I will say that I have only harvested one zucchini off of our plants this year and maybe a handful of cucumbers. It's been pretty pathetic, but I'm so thankful I have some neighbors close by that their gardens are doing really well and they've been sharing with me, so I have been so blessed with that. But I'm just going to show you the improvement first on the tomatoes. They have grown so much and they are starting to fruit, and I'm getting a couple red tomatoes and ripe tomatoes, so that makes me happy. And the beans, I actually haven't harvested any beans yet, but they are ready. I could be picking tonight and having some for dinner tonight. They are finally coming on. I would say about 4 or 5 days ago, I had little sprouts, and today they look like they're good and full, and I cannot wait to have fresh beans out of the garden. So let's start off with the tomatoes. So this is our tomatoes here. We have, oh boy, maybe about 40 tomatoes. As you can see, we finally have some nice ripe tomatoes. They're not perfect, but I'm happy that I actually have some tomatoes ripening on the vine. Then I have some cherry tomatoes that are doing really well. They're starting to ripen up. These are the sweet 1 million cherry tomatoes. They've always done really well in the past, and they continue to do well here. So I grow them not necessarily because they're like my favorite tasting cherry tomato, but because they're just so prolific. This tomato has got some more flowers coming. Thankful for that. Some more flowers coming there. And this, I want to say, is my striped. I'm always talking about these tomatoes. You can see they're coming on nicely. There's some more here. I just have them down as a red and green striped. I can't 100% remember what they're called, but they have, I'll show you later on when they do ripen up. They have phenomenal colors, green stripes with like a dark, almost brown red color, and they are wonderful. Probably one of my favorite slicing tomatoes that I grow. So then I have these cherries here. They're kind of like a cherry tomato. And I have 2 plants of these, and you can see there's some yellowing of the leaves over here. And then there's the second plant also has the yellowing of the leaves as well. They're not looking super great, but they are bearing lots. And these are the Sunrise Bumblebee tomato. I like them specifically for their color. I love adding colorful fruits to my salads. And they do bear quite a bit of tomatoes. And they're a little bit larger than the Sweet 1 Million. So they're really nice to have. They seem to be doing okay with the heat that we've been getting lately, have really helped and brought out a lot of the flowers that we were missing in early August. They seem to have really thrived in the beginning. We've got more into like these cooler temperatures at night. Goes down to about 7. And I think that it's really affected the tomatoes. Oh, and then these ones, these are kind of neat. These are also another cherry tomato. We have lots of slicers, but like I said, I like a lot of color in my salads. They're like more of a purple or black tomato. And I love the smoky tomatoes are probably one of my favorite tasting tomatoes. So they're really nice to add into the salads. So they're coming on. I haven't harvested even 1 tomato yet, but I think there's definitely a couple here I can pick. But you can see here, this is just from, a lot of it is from uneven watering, and it's just been so much rain that it's probably what is causing the tomato to do that. I'm probably just going to end up giving it to the chickens. Anyway, so this is my tomatoes, which, like I said, I haven't even harvested 1 tomato yet. So then we have the kale, which is still doing okay. I planted this the very beginning. As you can see, we've got some lovely cabbage moss flying around here, but still not doing too bad. It's a little bit overgrown, but it's about the only thing that we can harvest off of right now. And then we have the celery. So the celery is doing not too bad. Celery really likes to have wet conditions and rain, but it also really does need heat. So we have quite a bit of celery coming. I really would have thought it would have been a lot larger than this. Last year at this time, the celery was probably 3-4 times the size it is now. So even with these conditions on plants that like a wet environment, they still really do need to have the heat, because these thrive in wet conditions, but it's just been so wet and cold. I'm not getting a whole lot out of them. So I will be getting some celery, but I'm not going to be getting half the amount of what we got last year with last year's harvest. The beets, they have seemed to have picked up some. They were just little tiny in the last video when I showed you. I don't foresee a large harvest of beets this year, but they are coming along. And it just shows you the difference, because over the last few weeks, we have had some pretty good days of heat. And that is exactly what these plants really do need. And so they have grown, but they haven't had the consistent heat that we need. And we've got some chard. You can kind of see here, we got another one there. The chard is not anywhere near where it should be. Haven't really harvested anything yet. I can probably come out and harvest a little bit for lunch today. But usually I have so much chard. My garden really isn't doing well. I have to say I'm really not impressed, not super happy. But the beans have started. So this is the bean area here. And we are definitely getting quite a bit of beans. But I had to sow my bean seeds 3 times just to get this patch. But you can see they're coming on nicely. So these are the Royal Burgundy bush beans, some of my favorite. Still have lots of flowers coming on. This will be my first harvest once I go through and pick all these beans. But there's lots to be picked here. So I am thankful I'm going to get a good harvest of beans. Again, not anywhere near what it should be. So I don't know if you have been experiencing a garden like this. We have usually harvested so much food by this time. It's about the 13th of August, and I have harvested 1 zucchini and maybe about a handful, I would say maybe 6 to 8 cucumbers, and I'm talking like little cucumbers. And that's all that we've really harvested. Some of the lettuce we have, some of the kale. I would say, like, if I had to say like how much a percentage of a garden. So over the last few years, we've had an abundance and a good harvest of our garden. So I'd say like 100%, right? I would say this year we have about 20%, and that's no lie. Like, it is, we would definitely not survive on our garden this year. There's no way. It's quite sad. You put so much effort into having a garden. There's so much that goes into it, from, you know, when we start our seeds in this, you know, early spring, even late winter, to tilling and preparing the ground and adding, you know, soil and compost and manure, amendments. And then it's just like maintaining, you know, like keeping the weeds down, pruning, transplanting, and then, you know, for all the work that goes in it, you want to have a successful year, but it's not a great year. But I was talking to someone this morning, and I was just saying, like, a lot of people are experiencing this with their garden. We can take lessons from this. So I know now, like, we have to learn to prepare for these hard times. So when we have these bad seasons with no heat, too much rain, we have to be like, okay, so how can we improve it so that when we have a year like this, we can get a good harvest? So it's like, okay, we really do need to have the condition of a greenhouse, and we really need to focus on that. Now, last year and the year before, we had done so well outside the greenhouse because the conditions were right, that I was like, well, you know, it's doing so well, you know, you could really survive without a greenhouse. And then before that, we were focusing on the greenhouse and using it inside. And sometimes, it got too hot that things were just not, we're just not doing well either. And so it's really taught me that there is a balance. We need to kind of have both. You need to have a place where you have controlled climate and conditions, and a place where you can just have stuff outside. And that just gives you that space for error. So it's really just kind of taught me, re-edified something that I kind of knew, but because we've had, 2-3 years of plenty, I was like, okay, this is going well. It was kind of like, okay, I've got the reminder that we just can't 100% rely on the garden outside. We need to have a controlled environment for these off years, especially if you plan on living off of a lot of your garden supplies. So we are probably going to have to go to some roadside stands, Mennonite, Amish roadside stands, and pick up a lot of the things that we don't have available here. And definitely looking at markets to put stuff away for winter, but it's just not a great year this year. One thing that I will say was really great was our fruits, all the fruits. We even went blackberry picking yesterday. So much blackberries. It was incredible. So the rain has been super, super good for those fruits, but not so great for the garden, especially for me. But if you're in another area, because we're in such a low spot and our ground is usually wet even on a dry year, if you're in a dry area, your garden might be doing just fine. So it just depends where you are. But for me, it's just kind of showed me, okay, we've got to really look at, what if we have another year like this, what would we do? Because there's not much I can do to really improve the outside on a wet year like this. But hopefully next year would be a better year. But, there's definitely things to learn as you go. The grapes, you can see the grapes are doing pretty well, actually. Like I said, the fruits, they're doing really, really great. Lots and lots of these grapes just coming in. And these are my Somerset grapes, so I just cannot wait to get in here and really start harvesting a lot of these grapes. Lots of really good fruit. So we haven't had such a great success with the vegetables, but the fruits are doing fantastic this year. So this here is our potato patch. We usually get about 200 pounds of potatoes out of here. We planted 3 rows, one over here, one in the middle, and one over here. This one got so wet, I think it completely rotted all of our seed potatoes, because we don't have hardly any potatoes at all along here, but we've got these 2 rows coming up. Still, we're not going to get the same amount of harvest as we normally would with our potatoes. Then we've got our cucumbers that have started to finally take off. It took them so long to start growing and to start spreading. But I have collected some, like I said, maybe a handful. I've got a few cucumbers in here. They're coming along. We've got cucumbers here. I got these. These are like my pickling, the national pickling. I also have the Marketmore. We've got a couple other ones growing. These ones here, the pickling also. We've got some nice ones coming over here. This one is just starting as well. And then we've got the Marketmore here. It's growing okay. Now normally I can trellis these up or let them grow and it's just completely covered here, but you can see it's barely done anything. But I am getting some cucumbers, so I guess I can't complain. Over here, where my corn, usually where I plant my corn and my squash, and no squash came up. So as you can see, I haven't even bothered to do any weeding here because I know that this garden isn't going to be successful. So I just let it go. And we only have a few corn coming up, which probably we're not going to get anything out of. I was really sad that I don't even have any winter squash at all. Usually I plant the winter squash in amongst the corn. I'm just letting it go this year because I know I'm not really going to get anything out of it. So I have a couple zucchini plants here that have not yet produced anything. I haven't got a harvest off of them. There's a few male flowers. That's really about all. I don't even know if I'm going to get anything out of these. I've got my onions, my red and my cooking onions, which they seem to be doing really well. And then I have my shallots that have gone to seed. So those are my shallots over there. So we got lots of good onions, which is great. And this here is my zucchini plant that I started in April in the house. And I've gotten one giant zucchini off of this. And the apples, they're coming, they're just about ready. My pepper plants that really haven't done anything. I've got a couple peppers. These are the sweet banana peppers. But I mean, last year they were just so big. These things, like, they were massive. I can't get them to grow at all. So this is just the condition of our garden this year. You know, I'll be thankful for the things that we are getting, obviously. So that's it. There's not really much to show. You take what you get. You know, you can be thankful for the years that are plentiful. So like last year we had such a good harvest that we put a lot of stuff away, and I'm thankful we still have some things left over that I can use for this winter as well. So we have lots left over, and we're just going to have to deal with that and buy some of the produce for sure. I'm really looking forward to another year. I come out here and I'm just like, oh, I'm sure there's lots of other people that are going through this as well this year. I know that some of the locals around here are experiencing a lot of the same thing. That's all I really have to share for our August garden tour. Another thing is too, I'm probably going to have to bring in some manure or compost for this specific garden. You know, we live, we move on, and we learn from this. Hopefully doing better the next year. Take what you can get from your garden, but sometimes it's not so much what you get from it, but it's the experience that you get and what you've learned as a gardener starting off years ago, planting. And like I've said before in other videos, I started off planting in a tiny backyard in a city and started out maybe planting one or two tomato plants, maybe one or two cucumber plants, and that was about it. You know, that was the extent of my garden. So each year you go through these ups and downs and challenges of gardening, and it just increases your knowledge. It helps you to learn and research and find new ways just to make it work. And I think that's what we can take from these bad years of gardening. And so that the next time this comes around, we have a better chance of having a more successful garden.